The sky was turning orange as the sun began to set over the hills of Los Angeles. Will Smith's beautiful home stood tall and proud in the fancy neighborhood of Calabasas. The large white house with its big windows and green gardens was a place Will loved to call home when he wasn't making movies. That evening, Will was far away in Australia. He was working on his newest film. His wife and children were also away, visiting family on the East Coast. Only a few staff members were at the house, cleaning and taking care of things while the family was gone. Maria, the housekeeper, was finishing her work in the kitchen when she smelled something strange. At first, she thought someone might be cooking something, but then she remembered she was alone on this floor. The smell got stronger. It was smoke. "Hello? Is someone burning something?" she called out, walking toward the east side of the house. No one answered. When Maria opened the door to the east wing, black smoke hit her face. She coughed and stepped back quickly. Through the smoke, she could see orange flames eating up the curtains in the library. The fire was spreading fast. "Fire! Fire!" she screamed, running back to grab her phone. Her hand shook as she dialed 911. 911. "What's your emergency?" the operator asked. "There's a fire at Will Smith's house. I work here. I'm the housekeeper. Please hurry. It's getting bigger." Maria cried into the phone. "What's the address?" the operator asked. Maria gave the address and was told help would come soon. Next, Maria called the security team and the house manager. Then she ran outside to wait for the fire trucks. The gardener and 2 other staff members joined her. They all watched in horror as the flames grew higher. "The fire trucks should be here by now," the gardener said, checking his watch. It had been 15 minutes since Maria's call. Neighbors began coming out of their homes. They stood on the street, pointing and taking videos with their phones. Some brought garden hoses, but the water wasn't strong enough to reach the fire. "Where are the firefighters?" a neighbor shouted. Finally, after 27 minutes, they heard sirens. Fire trucks from Station 7 turned onto the street. But instead of rushing into action, the trucks slowed down as they approached the house. The people watching looked confused. Chief Walter Brennan stepped out of the first truck. He was a tall man with gray hair and cold eyes. He looked at the burning house, then turned to his team. "Johnson, set up a perimeter. Phillips, connect to the hydrant. Everyone else, focus on making sure the fire doesn't spread to other houses," he ordered. The firefighters moved slowly. Some of them looked uncomfortable with the chief's orders, but they followed them anyway. One young firefighter, Jason Chen, approached the chief. "Sir, shouldn't we focus on the main fire first? We could still save most of the house," Jason suggested. "Follow orders, Chen," Chief Brennan snapped. "We protect the neighborhood first." The neighbors were recording everything on their phones. They could hear what the chief was saying. They saw how slowly the firefighters were moving. Something wasn't right. Maria watched in tears as the fire spread from the east wing to the main part of the house. All the beautiful things, the family photos, the memories, everything was burning. And the firefighters who were supposed to save the home seemed to be letting it happen on purpose. "Someone call Will," Maria cried. "Someone needs to tell them what's happening here." By now, news vans were arriving. Reporters stood with their cameras pointed at the burning mansion and the firefighters who didn't seem to be in any hurry to put out the flames. No one knew it yet, but what was happening that evening would soon become much more than just a house fire. By morning, half of Will Smith's beautiful home was gone. The east wing was nothing but ashes and broken walls. The main part of the house had heavy smoke damage. Water from the few hoses that finally worked had soaked what the fire didn't burn. Will Smith was eating breakfast in his hotel room in Australia when his phone rang. It was his house manager, David. "Will, I have bad news," David said, his voice shaking. "There was a fire at the house last night." Will's face went pale. "Is everyone okay? Was anyone hurt?" "Everyone is safe," David assured him. "But the house, it's bad, Will. Really bad." "I'm coming home right away," Will said, already standing up to pack his things. On the long flight home, Will watched videos that neighbors had sent him. He saw how the fire trucks arrived late. He saw how slowly the firefighters moved. He saw Chief Brennan telling his men to protect the neighbors' houses instead of saving his home. Something didn't feel right. When Will's plane landed in Los Angeles 12 hours later, news crews were waiting. Cameras flashed as he walked through the airport. Will didn't stop to talk. His face was serious and tired. A car took Will straight to his burned home. Yellow police tape surrounded the property. The smell of smoke still filled the air. Will stood silently, looking at the damage. Maria, the housekeeper, ran to him with tears in her eyes. "Mr. Smith, I'm so sorry," she cried. "I called them as soon as I saw the fire, but they took so long to come, and when they did," her voice trailed off. "Tell me everything," Will said quietly. Maria told him how the firefighters had acted. Then neighbors came over with their stories. They showed Will the videos they had taken on their phones. In one video, Chief Brennan could be heard saying, "Take your time, boys. No rush here." Will's friend and neighbor, basketball star LeBron James, put his hand on Will's shoulder. "This wasn't right, man. Everyone saw it. Those firefighters let your house burn on purpose." More neighbors came forward. They had all seen it. They had all felt something was wrong. An elderly woman who lived across the street handed Will her phone. "I recorded their whole conversation," she said. "I was standing close to them, and they didn't notice me." Will played the recording. Chief Brennan's voice was clear. "It's just Smith's place. Let it burn a bit before we really get to work. Teach him he's not special around here." Will's hands shook with anger, but he took a deep breath and stayed calm. "Thank you all for these videos and recordings," he said to his neighbors. "This isn't just about my house. This is about something much bigger." That afternoon, Will called his lawyer, Michael Rogers. Michael listened to the recordings and watched the videos. "This is clear evidence of misconduct, Will," Michael said. "Maybe even a hate crime. We should file charges right away." But Will had been thinking during his long flight home. He had a different idea. "Before we do anything legal, I want to understand why this happened," Will said. "And I want to make sure it never happens to anyone else." That evening, Will posted a short message on his social media. "Last night, my home burned while firefighters stood by and watched. But this isn't just my story. How many others have faced the same treatment without cameras watching? This ends now." Within minutes, Will's post was shared millions of times. News stations played the videos of the firefighters nonstop. People across the country were shocked and angry. And at Fire Station 7, Chief Walter Brennan was starting to realize that he had made a terrible mistake. The morning after Will's social media post, Fire Station 7 was in big trouble. News vans parked outside the station. Reporters shouted questions at any firefighter who walked in or out. Inside, Chief Brennan called an emergency meeting. "Listen up, everyone," Chief Brennan said to his team. His face was red with anger. "No one talks to the press. No one says anything about the Smith fire. Understand, if anyone asks, we followed all normal procedures." Most of the firefighters nodded, looking nervous, but in the back of the room, young Jason Chen felt sick to his stomach. Jason was the newest firefighter at Station 7. He had only been working there for 6 months. That night at Will Smith's house, he had wanted to rush in and fight the fire right away. But the chief had stopped him. After the meeting, Jason went to the locker room alone. He pulled out his phone and looked at it for a long time. He had something no one else knew about. On the night of the fire, he had recorded some of the conversations between Chief Brennan and the other senior firefighters. Jason had been recording because he wanted to learn how to handle big fires. But what he caught on his phone was much more important. Jason played one of the recordings again. He heard Chief Brennan's voice clearly. "Let it burn for a while. Smith thinks he's better than everyone else, living in his big fancy house. Let's see how special he feels now. Another voice, belonging to Doug Farley, the second in command, answered, "What if someone asks why we're so slow?" "Say we had equipment problems," Chief Brennan had replied. "No one can prove anything." But they were wrong. Jason could prove it. Jason went home after his shift ended. He couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about what was right and what was wrong. By morning, he knew what he had to do. Jason called the local news station. "I have evidence about the Will Smith house fire," he said. "I'm a firefighter from Station 7. 3 hours later, Jason sat in a small room with a reporter named Sarah Johnson. His hand shook as he handed over his phone. "There are 8 recordings," he explained. "And I have these text messages too." Sarah looked through the text messages. There were dozens of them between Chief Brennan and other firefighters. Many contained racist comments about Will Smith and other black celebrities in the area. Some texts specifically talked about responding slowly if there was ever an emergency at certain homes. "Why are you sharing this?" Sarah asked. "You could lose your job." Jason looked down at his hands. "Because it's wrong. I became a firefighter to help people. All people. What they did goes against everything I believe in." Sarah's news story aired that evening. It showed Jason's face, though his name was kept secret. It played some of the recordings. It showed screenshots of the text messages, with the bad words blurred out. The story spread even faster than Will's social media post. People were shocked that firefighters, who were supposed to help everyone, could be so hateful. Will Smith watched the news from a hotel where he was staying. He immediately asked his team to find out who the young firefighter was. "He risked everything to tell the truth," Will said. "I need to thank him." At Fire Station 7, chaos erupted. Chief Brennan was called to the fire department headquarters. Doug Farley and 3 other senior firefighters were told not to come to work until further notice. And Jason Chen sat alone in his apartment, wondering if he had done the right thing by speaking up. His phone wouldn't stop ringing with calls from reporters and lawyers. He felt scared but also proud. The truth was finally coming out. 2 days after Jason Chen's story aired on TV, Will Smith's lawyer finally found him. Jason was staying at his sister's apartment, hiding from reporters who kept calling and coming to his door. "Mr. Chen," the lawyer said on the phone, "Will Smith would like to meet with you. Are you willing to talk with him?" Jason felt nervous. Will Smith was a huge movie star, and now Jason had gotten involved in his business. What would Will say to him? Was he angry? "Yes," Jason said finally. "I'll meet with him." That afternoon, a car with dark windows picked Jason up. The driver took him to a fancy hotel downtown. In a private meeting room, Will Smith was waiting. He stood up when Jason walked in. "Thank you for coming," Will said, shaking Jason's hand. "And thank you even more for telling the truth. That took real courage." Jason relaxed a little. Will didn't seem angry at all. "I just did what was right," Jason said. "I couldn't be part of something so wrong." They sat down, and Will asked Jason to tell him everything about Fire Station 7. Jason explained how Chief Brennan had been in charge for 15 years. He talked about how the chief liked to pick and choose which emergency calls got fast responses. "It wasn't just your house," Jason explained. "Anytime there was a call from certain neighborhoods where more Black or Latino families live, Brennan would say, 'No rush on this one, boys.' It made me sick." Will listened carefully, taking notes. "How many other firefighters felt the way you do?" he asked. "Some of the younger ones," Jason said, "but we were afraid to speak up. Brennan could end our careers with one bad word." As they talked, Will's lawyer came in with big news. The fire department had just announced that Chief Brennan and 4 other firefighters were suspended without pay while an investigation took place. "That's good news," Will said, "but it's not enough." He looked at Jason. "This is bigger than just one fire station or one incident. This is happening all over the country." Will shared his new idea with Jason. He wanted to start a movement for change. He wanted to make sure emergency services treated everyone equally, no matter their skin color or where they lived. "Will you help me?" Will asked Jason. "Your voice is powerful. You've seen this problem from the inside." Jason thought about his dream of being a firefighter. He had wanted to help people since he was a little boy. Now he had a chance to help even more people by fixing a broken system. "Yes," Jason said. "I'll help." After their meeting, Will called a press conference for the next day. News spread quickly that Will Smith was going to speak publicly for the first time since the fire. That night, people across America watched video clips of Jason's evidence on the news. They saw the text messages where Chief Brennan and others had used racist language. They heard the recordings of firefighters being told to go slowly to Will's house. People were angry. Online, the hashtag #FireStationRacism started trending. People began sharing their own stories of times when emergency help came too slowly to certain neighborhoods. By morning, protests had formed outside Fire Station 7. People carried signs that said "Fire CHIEFBRENN" and "Emergency CRVCS for all." The fire department commissioner called Will, begging for a private meeting before the press conference. But Will had made up his mind. This problem needed to be faced in public with everyone watching. Will Smith was ready to speak, and the whole nation was ready to listen. The next day, TV cameras and reporters filled the big hotel meeting room. People from all the major news channels waited for Will Smith to speak. The room buzzed with talk and questions. Everyone wondered what Will would say. At exactly noon, Will Smith walked into the room. Jason Chen walked beside him. The room got quiet. Cameras flashed. Will stepped up to the microphones. "Thank you all for coming," Will began. His voice was steady and strong. "3 days ago, my home burned while firefighters stood by and did little to save it. But I'm not here to talk about my house. I'm here to talk about a much bigger problem." Will pointed to Jason. "This brave young man showed us all that racism is alive in our emergency services. Some firefighters at Station 7 decided who deserves help based on skin color. They chose who to save and who to let burn." Will held up printed copies of the text messages Jason had shared. These messages showed that Chief Brennan and others had a pattern of responding slowly to homes of black families and other minorities. This wasn't just about me. This was about many people who didn't have cameras watching when it happened to them. The room was completely silent now. Everyone listened carefully. "I could file a lawsuit. I could demand money. I could rebuild my home and move on," Will continued. "But that wouldn't fix the real problem. So today, I'm announcing something different." Will explained his new plan. He was starting the Equal Response Initiative. This new organization would track emergency response times in different neighborhoods. It would make sure fire departments, police, and ambulances helped everyone equally. Will was giving $10 million of his own money to start it. "And I'm not just giving money," Will said. "I'm giving my time. I'll be working with this initiative every day until we see real change." Then Jason stepped up to speak. His voice shook a little at first, but grew stronger. "I became a firefighter to save lives. All lives," Jason said. "What I saw at Station 7 was wrong. Emergency help shouldn't depend on what you look like or where you live. I lost my job for speaking up, but I would do it again." A reporter raised her hand. "Are you worried about backlash from other firefighters?" Jason nodded. "Yes, I am. But I'm more worried about the people who might die if we don't fix this problem." Another reporter asked Will, "Do you think this is just a problem at Station 7, or is it bigger?" "This is happening all over the country," Will answered. "Since this story broke, my team has received over 3,000 emails from people sharing similar stories. This is just the tip of the iceberg." The fire department commissioner, Linda Marshall, was also at the press conference. She asked to speak. Will invited her to the microphone. "What happened at Station 7 is unacceptable," Commissioner Marshall said. "We have fired Chief Brennan and 4 other firefighters effective immediately. We are launching a full investigation of all fire stations in the county, and we want to work with Mr. Smith's initiative to make real changes. Will smiled for the first time. This is a good start, he said. But we need action, not just words. As the press conference ended, people across America were watching. In living rooms and offices, people talked about what they had seen. Many were shocked. Some were angry. But everyone knew that something important was happening. This was no longer just a story about a celebrity's house fire. This was becoming a movement. 1 week after the press conference, the investigation into Fire Station 7 was moving fast. A special team from the state government came to look at all the records. They checked response times for every emergency call over the past 5 years. What they found was shocking. The team made a map of the city showing how long it took firefighters to reach different areas. On the map, rich white neighborhoods had fast response times, shown in green. But areas where more Black and Latino families lived had much slower times, shown in red. The investigation team also interviewed every firefighter who had worked at Station 7 during Chief Brennan's time. Many were afraid to talk at first, but after seeing Jason Chen on TV, more firefighters began to share their stories. A firefighter named Mike Torres told how Chief Brennan had once said to him, "People like you should be grateful we come at all." Mike was Latino, and he had kept quiet about this comment for years because he was afraid of losing his job. Will Smith's Equal Response Initiative was helping with the investigation. Will hired lawyers and data experts to look at fire departments in 10 other major cities. They found similar patterns in 7 of those cities. Emergency services were slower in minority neighborhoods almost everywhere they looked. The story was now on national TV every day. People began checking response times in their own cities. Community groups held meetings to share their experiences. Some people had stories of family members who had died while waiting too long for an ambulance or fire truck. Will Smith turned his burned home into a headquarters for the Equal Response Initiative. In the part of the house that was still standing, teams of volunteers answered phones and collected stories from across the country. Jason Chen became the face of change within the fire service. He traveled to fire stations in different states, talking to firefighters about speaking up when they saw something wrong. Some firefighters were angry at him for betraying other firefighters, but many more thanked him for his courage. Chief Brennan and the 4 fired firefighters were now facing criminal charges. Prosecutors said they had shown deliberate negligence that could have caused death. If found guilty, they could go to prison. Chief Brennan finally spoke to the press. He stood outside the courthouse with his lawyer. "I made some bad jokes in text messages," he admitted, "but I never let anyone's house burn on purpose. This is all being blown out of proportion." Nobody believed him. Too much evidence showed that he had treated people differently based on their race. The investigation found that he had even created a secret list of homes that should get special treatment, all belonging to minorities. Meanwhile, Fire Station 7 got a new fire chief. Her name was Keisha Davis, and she was the first Black woman to lead a fire station in the county. On her first day, she gathered all the firefighters together. "From now on, every second counts for every person," Chief Davis said. "I don't care if it's a mansion or a small apartment. I don't care who lives there. We save everyone with the same urgency." The firefighters applauded. Many of them had been uncomfortable with the old ways, but hadn't known how to change things. Now, they had a fresh start. Will Smith visited Fire Station 7 to meet Chief Davis. News cameras captured them shaking hands in front of the station. "This is just the beginning," Will told reporters. "One new fire chief won't fix everything, but it's a start." Across America, people were watching and waiting to see what would happen next. 3 months after the fire at Will Smith's home, the trial of Chief Walter Brennan began. The courthouse was packed with people. News cameras lined the street outside. This had become one of the biggest trials the city had ever seen. Inside the courtroom, Will Smith sat in the front row. Next to him was Jason Chen, who would be the main witness against Chief Brennan. On the other side of the room, Chief Brennan sat with his expensive lawyers. He looked nervous but still proud. The trial started with the prosecutor, a woman named Aisha Johnson, speaking to the jury. "This case is about trust," she said. "We trust firefighters to help us when we're in danger. But Chief Brennan broke that trust. He chose who to help based on the color of their skin. That's not just wrong. It's against the law." Chief Brennan's lawyer argued that his client was a hero who had saved many lives over his 30 years as a firefighter. He said the text messages were just locker room talk and didn't mean anything. Then Jason Chen took the stand. He was nervous, but his voice was clear as he told the jury everything he had seen and heard at Fire Station 7. "Chief Brennan told us to go slow to certain neighborhoods," Jason testified. "He would say things like, 'No rush, it's just the south side,' which is where mostly black families live." Jason played the recordings he had made on the night of Will Smith's fire. The courtroom was silent as everyone listened to Chief Brennan's voice saying, "Let it burn for a while." Next, data experts showed the jury maps and charts of response times across the city. The evidence was clear. Fire Station 7 took much longer to respond to calls from minority neighborhoods. But the most powerful moment came when families took the stand to tell their stories. A woman named Tanya Jackson told how her father had died of a heart attack while waiting for an ambulance that took 27 minutes to arrive. Her family lived just 3 miles from Fire Station 7. "My father might be alive today if they had come quickly," Tanya said through tears. Day after day, more evidence and stories came out. Chief Brennan finally took the stand to defend himself. He denied doing anything wrong, but he couldn't explain the text messages or the recordings. After 2 weeks, it was time for the jury to decide. They went into a private room to talk about all they had heard. Everyone waited nervously. Will Smith sat quietly in the courthouse hallway. A reporter asked him what he hoped would happen. "I hope for justice," Will said. "Not just for me, but for every person who deserves equal protection in an emergency." After just 4 hours, the jury returned with their decision. The courtroom fell silent as the judge asked for their verdict. "We find the defendant, Walter Brennan, guilty of criminal negligence and civil rights violations," the jury foreman announced. Chief Brennan's face turned white. His wife began to cry. The judge said sentencing would happen in 2 weeks, but Brennan could face up to 10 years in prison. Outside the courthouse, people cheered. Will Smith stood with Jason Chen at his side as they spoke to reporters. "This verdict sends a message," Will said. "No one is above the law, especially those we trust to protect us." But the fight wasn't over. This was just one fire chief in one city. The Equal Response Initiative had found similar problems in fire departments across the country. There was still much work to do. As Will walked to his car, he looked back at the courthouse. This victory was important, but it was just one step in a much longer journey toward change. 2 weeks after the verdict, Chief Brennan received his sentence, 8 years in prison. The judge called his actions a betrayal of public trust of the worst kind. The other 4 firefighters who had helped Brennan also received prison sentences, though shorter ones. The case had opened many people's eyes. Fire departments across the country began looking at their own response times. Some fire chiefs, afraid of being the next Brennan, started making changes right away. Will Smith's Equal Response Initiative was now working with the federal government. They created new rules that all emergency services had to follow. Every fire station, ambulance service, and police department now had to track their response times by neighborhood and make the information public. 6 months after the fire, Will started rebuilding his home. But he made an unusual decision. He decided to add a special building on his property, a training center for emergency workers. This center will teach firefighters, police officers, and paramedics how to serve all communities equally, Will explained at the opening ceremony. We'll train them not just in rescue skills, but in treating everyone with respect and fairness. Jason Chen became the first director of the new training center. He had become a national hero for many people. Children dressed as firefighters for Halloween carried signs that said, "Be like Jason." Schools invited him to talk about doing the right thing even when it's hard. The burned part of Will's house was rebuilt, but with a difference. On the wall facing the street, Will put up a large plaque that told the story of the fire. The last lines on the plaque read, "From the ashes of hatred grew the flowers of change." Around the country, emergency services were changing. In Chicago, the fire department put cameras on all their trucks to record response times and firefighter actions. In Atlanta, they created a citizen board to watch over emergency services. In Los Angeles, they moved fire stations to make sure all neighborhoods had equal coverage. Chief Keisha Davis from Station 7 was now helping other fire stations change their cultures. She traveled around the country, speaking to firefighters about treating all people equally. "A firefighter's job is to save lives and property," she would say, "not to judge who deserves saving." Will Smith went back to making movies, but he spent much of his free time working with the Equal Response Initiative. The organization grew larger, with offices in 20 cities. They had teams of lawyers ready to help anyone who experienced discrimination from emergency services. 1 year after the fire, Will hosted a special event at his rebuilt home. He invited families from across the country who had been affected by slow emergency responses in their neighborhoods. Over 500 people came. Among them was Tanya Jackson, whose father had died waiting for an ambulance. She now worked for the Equal Response Initiative, helping others tell their stories. "Before, I felt powerless," Tanya told the crowd. "Now I know I can make a difference." Will looked out at all the people gathered on his lawn. There were Black families, Latino families, Asian families, white families, all united by a common cause. "1 year ago, my house burned," Will said. "It was a terrible thing. But look what has grown from that terrible moment. Look at all of you, fighting for change in your own communities. Look at all the lives that will be saved because of your work." The crowd applauded. News cameras captured the moment. Across America, people watched and felt hopeful. But there was still work to do. Not everyone welcomed the changes. Some emergency workers resisted the new rules. Some cities tried to hide their response time data. The fight for equal emergency services wasn't over yet. 2 years after the fire, Will Smith stood on a stage in Washington, D.C. Behind him was the President of the United States. In front of him were thousands of people gathered on the National Mall. They had come from all over the country for this special day. "Today, we sign the Emergency Services Equality Act into law," the President announced. "This law will make sure that everyone in America gets the same fast response in an emergency, no matter their skin color, where they live, or how much money they have." The crowd cheered. Will Smith smiled as he watched the President sign the new law. This moment was the result of 2 years of hard work by the Equal Response Initiative and thousands of volunteers across the country. The new law required all emergency services to use special tracking systems in their vehicles. These systems would record exactly how long it took to respond to each call. The information would be checked by independent groups to make sure no neighborhoods were being treated unfairly. The law also created a special team that could investigate any fire department, police station, or ambulance service that showed signs of discrimination, and it set aside money to build new fire stations in areas that had been ignored for too long. After the signing ceremony, Will spoke to the crowd. "When my house burned that night, I lost photos, awards, and memories," he said. "But what we've gained as a country is worth so much more. We've gained a promise that all lives matter equally in an emergency." The crowd clapped and cheered. Among them was Jason Chen, now the head of a national organization for firefighter ethics. Next to him stood Chief Keisha Davis, recently named as the new fire commissioner for the entire state. And there was someone else special in the crowd. An older man named Robert Martinez stood with tears in his eyes. 2 years ago, he had been a firefighter at Station 7. He had not taken part in the racism, but he had stayed silent about it for years. Now he worked with the Equal Response Initiative, teaching firefighters how to speak up when they saw something wrong. "Silence helps the wrong side," Robert often told young firefighters. "When you see something wrong, your voice matters." Will Smith had returned to his movie career, but he still spent much of his time working on emergency service reform. His burned home was now completely rebuilt. The training center on his property had trained over 2,000 emergency workers from across the country. As Will left the stage in Washington, a young girl approached him. She was about 10 years old. "My name is Zoe," she said. "My mom says you're the reason the fire truck came so fast when our house was on fire last month. They saved my dog. Thank you." Will knelt down to talk with her. "I'm glad your dog is safe," he said. "But it wasn't just me. It was thousands of people working together to make things better." That night, Will sat in his hotel room looking out at the Washington Monument, lit up against the dark sky. His phone buzzed with a text from Jason Chen. "2 years ago, we were strangers on opposite sides of a burning house," Jason had written. "Now we helped change a nation. Sometimes good things really can rise from the ashes." Will texted back, "The work isn't over. Some fire departments still resist change. Some people still don't get help in time. But we've made a good start." And it was true. Across America, emergency response times were becoming more equal. Lives were being saved that might have been lost before. Children like Zoe were growing up in a world where they could trust that help would come quickly, no matter who they were or where they lived. What had started with one burning house had become a fire of change that spread across the nation. A fire that built instead of destroyed.